Welcome to News Briefs. Today we're digging into this stack of headlines and summaries you sent over, really trying to pull out the crucial insights, maybe some surprising facts you need to know fast.
Right.
We've got a bit of everything here: U.S. policy, global relations, economy, tech, health, sports, culture, you name it.
It's quite a mix.
Yeah, and our mission is pretty straightforward: help you quickly get a handle on the most important takeaways from all these reports. Okay, let's unpack this.
That's good. So starting with U.S. politics, a really big theme in the material was the debate around the president's spending bill. The projected impacts are getting a lot of attention.
They really are. I saw figures projecting something like a nearly $2.5 trillion increase in debt over 10 years. That's huge.
It's a massive number. And what's also really striking, alongside the fiscal side, is the potential human cost being discussed. The estimate mentioned is around 11 million people potentially losing health insurance by 2034.
Wow, 11 million.
Yeah, the thinking seems to tie this to, expected changes in certain programs under the bill.
And the reactions highlighted, they're pretty intense, aren't they? Everything from calling it a repugnant abomination to, well, strong defenses from others.
Absolutely. It really shows how divisive this kind of legislation can be.
Yeah.
Different views on government spending and its effects.
Definitely. Okay, moving on slightly, the material also noted a key presidential interaction.
Yes, the first official call between President Trump and Xi Jinping since the second term started.
The first call. Yeah, that's definitely worth noting for global relations. And tied to that, maybe a major policy move, President Trump signing a proclamation restricting entry.
That's right, restricting entry for citizens from about 20 countries, and it's set to take effect pretty soon.
Okay, so what's the breakdown there? It sounds like a significant expansion.
It is. Looking at the details, you've got 12 countries facing total restrictions. These are mostly nations in Africa and the Middle East. Afghanistan, Libya, Somalia, Yemen are on the list, and also Haiti.
Total restrictions for those 12 and the other 7.
They face partial restrictions. That list includes places like Cuba and Venezuela.
Okay, and the reasons given?
Well, the justifications outlined cover things like national security concerns, lack of cooperation from the countries themselves, high rates of people overstaying visas, and there was even a connection made to the recent attack in Colorado.
Right. And did the material mention specific reasons for Cuba and Venezuela?
It did. For Cuba, the rationale mentioned is its designation as a state sponsor of terrorism. For Venezuela, it's apparently about lacking a clear authority for issuing reliable documents.
I see. And which visas does this hit hardest?
It primarily impacts the common non-immigrant visas. So think temporary stays business, tourism, student visas, exchange visit.
But there are exceptions, right? If you already have a valid visa or you're a permanent resident.
Exactly. Those are exceptions. Also, dual nationals using a passport from an unrestricted country and immediate family members applying for immigrant visas, provided they can, prove the relationship. But the overall expectation is that this will significantly complicate the existing immigrant visa process, too. The practical advice floating around was maybe avoid travel initially, just to sidestep potential issues at entry points.
Yeah, that makes sense. Better safe than sorry. Okay, let's pivot a bit. What about the economy? It seemed like a bit of a mixed bag in the reports.
It really was. On the one hand, some positive news. A record high average savings rate in 401k plans. One analysis put it at 14.3% in the first quarter of 2025.
Oh, wow. 14.3%.
Yeah, getting really close to that recommended 15% level. So that suggests some positive momentum for retirement saving.
That's definitely an upside. But then there's the challenging side involving AI and jobs.
Right. This is where it gets interesting how economic forecasts and tech intersect. Experts are warning that an expected economic slowdown could actually push companies to adopt AI faster.
Faster. Why is that?
Well, the thinking is they'd use it to replace jobs, cut costs, and boost productivity during that slowdown.
So, economic pressure potentially speeding up that tech shift in the workforce. And speaking of tech with global ripples, there was something about redirecting anti-drone technology.
Yes, tech that was originally meant for Ukraine is being sent to forces in the Middle East instead. The official line is it's for defense against groups like Iran or the Houthis.
Okay.
But some analysts are reading this as potentially a signal of reduced commitment to Kiev down the road. It's an interesting geopolitical angle on a tech decision.
Definitely is. And then there was this really fascinating tech application using AI on the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Yeah, this was really cool. They're using an AI model, I think it's called Enoch, to analyze the handwriting patterns.
Handwriting.
Exactly. And the findings are suggesting some scrolls might actually be centuries older than we thought. which could, reopen some pretty significant debates about ancient texts.
Wow, applying AI to ancient history. Okay, let's connect that to environment and health. Something about Sahara dust reaching Florida.
Right. That caused a spike in PM 2.5 levels.
Mhm.
That's a fine particulate matter, the really tiny stuff. Makes air quality tough, especially for people with breathing issues. Staying inside was the main advice.
Mm-hmm.
And another factor mentioned was a study confirming natural gas pipeline leaks are a significant source of that fine particle pollution. And it doesn't just affect the area right by the leak, it drifts into neighboring states too.
So, local leaks, widespread impact, and we're seeing air quality alerts again in New York, right? From the Canadian wildfires.
Yeah, indices over 100, which is unhealthy for sensitive groups. Again, the advice is limit time outdoors, maybe wear a mask.
Right. And on health more directly, June is Men's Health Month.
Correct. With a big emphasis this year on early prostate cancer detection, partly because of some recent high-profile diagnoses, it seems.
And the key stat there is pretty powerful, isn't it?
It really is. A 99% 5-year survival rate if it's caught early really underscores why screening and awareness matter so much.
Absolutely crucial. Okay, let's quickly touch on sports and culture from the material.
Sure. Sports had quite a bit. McLaren's 1-2 in F1 Spain, Piastri winning, an upcoming boxing title fight, De Los Santos versus Davis, updates to the UFC game, EA Sports UFC 5, adding alter egos like Masvidal and Kimbo Slice.
Right, and big matches too, like Spain versus France and the UEFA Nations League semis,
Right.
and NBA Finals Game 1 tonight, Pacers versus Thunder, with OKC favored.
Yeah, lots happening. And then in culture and society, some pretty serious reports. Very strong testimony came out in a well-known trial describing alleged extreme violence.
Heavy stuff. And developments continuing in Boulder, Colorado, too.
Yes, community vigils are still happening after the attack. The suspect, Mohammed Solomon, was charged with a hate crime and attempted murder. And separately, a judge blocked his family's deportation.
University tensions were also highlighted.
They were. President Trump reportedly suspended international student entry to Harvard, citing issues with controlling campus anti-Semitic violence.
Yeah.
And the Department of Education accused Columbia of allegedly tolerating harassment of Jewish students.
A lot of friction there. And finally, a really somber note from Gaza.
Yes. Israeli forces recovered the bodies of 2 hostages who were dual Israeli-U.S. citizens.
Just looking back across everything we've touched on, political decisions affecting travel and healthcare, economic forecasts, maybe driving tech adoption, global dust clouds impacting local air, it's all so interconnected, isn't it?
It really is. And tracking these connections, it's not just about collecting facts one by one. It's about seeing that web, how these seemingly separate events actually relate to each other.
Right. So maybe the final thought for you listening is just that as you take in all this information, consider how tracking those threads, those connections, really gives you a much deeper understanding of the complex world unfolding around us.